Brielle Palmer should have known something was off when the guy in the white tux offered her champagne before she'd even stepped onto the yacht. "Miss Palmer, they've been expecting you," he said with a smooth grin, gesturing toward the staircase that led up to the deck. The yacht was massive, glowing under the twilight sky like a floating palace. Soft jazz played from somewhere above, and the scent of salt water mixed with a faint aroma of grilled lobster. Brielle hesitated. She clutched her tiny silver clutch tighter. She asked, stepping cautiously onto the teakwood floorboards. "Of course," he said, nodding. "Upstairs. They're waiting." She wasn't sure who they were, but she figured it had to be the bachelorette party. Her best friend Jamie had begged her to come last minute after one of her bridesmaids got food poisoning. She barely knew the bride, but after a brutal week of student teaching and a breakup she didn't want to think about, she said yes. She followed the man up the stairs, heels clicking, heart pounding a little too fast. The yacht looked like something out of a movie's sleek design, crystal clear pool, and enough gold accents to make her feel very underdressed in her simple navy dress. Then she saw him. He was standing near the bar, a crystal glass in his hand, wearing a black suit that fit a little too perfectly. His dark hair was slightly tousled, like he'd just run his fingers through it, and his eyes sharp, steel gray, locked on hers the moment she stepped onto the deck. For a second, the air shifted. She glanced around. Wait. Where was the pink decor Jamie told her about? The bride tribe sashes? The ridiculous flamingo float? The man walked toward her. "You're early," he said, voice deep and calm. Brielle blinked. "Sorry, early for what?" He tilted his head. "Dinner. But I'm not complaining." "I think I'm on the wrong boat," she said, laughing nervously. That made him pause. "You're not here for the private dinner with me?" Her face turned red. "No. Oh my gosh, I'm supposed to be at a bachelorette party. There's another yacht, I think." He stared at her for a second longer, then broke into a low, surprised laugh. "Well, this just got interesting." She covered her face. "I am so sorry. I swear, they said it was the big white yacht, and someone waved me in, and this is so embarrassing." He raised a brow, amused. "You walked onto a stranger's yacht because a guy in a tux offered you champagne? I thought he worked for Jamie's future in-laws." He laughed again, softer this time. "You've got guts." "I've got anxiety," she muttered. He reached out his hand. "I'm Callan Zayne." She hesitated, then placed her hand in his. "Brielle Palmer." He held her gaze. "You're a teacher?" Her eyes widened. "How did you? You've got chalk on your dress." She looked down and groaned. "Oh no, that's not chalk. That's dry erase marker. I taught a double math block today." "Impressive," he said. "You teach math?" "Middle school," she said with a small, proud smile. "It's chaos, but I love it." He nodded. "You're brave." She looked around again. "So, is this your yacht?" Callan leaned against the railing, watching her. "Yeah. Wow." He noticed the way her eyes roamed the space, not with the greedy awe he was used to, but with honest curiosity. She wasn't impressed. She was just interested. "You hungry?" he asked. She blinked. "I mean, I don't want to intrude." "You're already here," he said. "And I'd rather have dinner with you than alone." "Is this the part where I find out you're secretly a serial killer?" He gave her a dry smile. "No. Just a millionaire with a terrible habit of eating alone." She tilted her head. "Seriously?" "Seriously." She bit her lip. "Well, okay. But I'm not staying long. I have to find the right boat eventually." He offered her his arm. "One dinner." "Nos trins punto." "One dinner," she echoed, slipping her arm through his. They walked toward the candlelit table set for two near the edge of the deck. A waiter appeared out of nowhere and pulled out her chair. "This is insane," she whispered. Callan smiled across the table at her. "You're not from around here." Nope. I'm from a small town in Oregon. Just moved here 2 months ago. Why? Needed a reset, she said, then gave him a look. You, he shrugged. Born and raised in Miami. Left. Built a tech company.
Sold it.
Bought this boat. She blinked.
Wait.
You're that Zayne. He raised a brow. That depends. The one who built Pulsenet? That's me.
She leaned back. Okay.
I'm officially out of my league. He leaned forward. You walked onto a stranger's yacht and stayed for dinner. You're not out of any league. She laughed. You're good at this. I'm not. I've just never met someone who didn't know who I was the moment I said my name. Or didn't care. I care, she said softly. Just not about your bank account. His smile faded a little. That's rare. The waiter brought lobster and pasta and they talked. About everything. Childhoods.
Regrets. Books.
Silly things like why he hated pickles and why she couldn't wear yellow. She made him laugh, really laugh, with his head thrown back and his hand over his chest, and he made her feel seen in a way that shocked her. By the time the stars came out, Brielle had forgotten all about the bachelorette party. I should probably go, she whispered, looking at her phone. It's almost midnight.
He stood.
Let me walk you to the dock. They stood at the edge of the boat, the city lights reflecting on the water. I don't usually do this, she said. Walk onto strangers' yachts. Stay. He looked at her. I don't usually ask someone to. She hesitated. I'm glad I came here, even if it was by accident. He stepped closer. Maybe it wasn't.
Her heart jumped.
Callan. He brushed a strand of hair from her face.
Stay.
Just a little longer. She stared up at him. Why? Because I haven't felt this alive in years, he admitted.
And I think
something real just started tonight. Don't you? She nodded slowly. He leaned in. Let me take you out. For real. She smiled. You mean not by accident this time?
He grinned.
Exactly. She nodded. Okay. Yes. As she stepped back onto the dock, he held her hand a little longer than necessary.
Brielle, he said.
She turned. I'm really glad you walked onto the wrong yacht. She smiled. Me too. Brielle pressed her phone to her ear, pacing under the awning of the cafe as the late morning sun lit up the Miami sidewalk. Her voice was tight. I know, Jamie. I know. I should have double-checked, but the guy waved me up, and it was the biggest yacht there. I just assumed. A pause. No, I didn't get kidnapped. And no, he wasn't creepy. He was, actually. She stopped herself, glancing through the glass window at the table she'd claimed. He was kind. Another pause. Can we just forget it happened? I'm already late for tutoring, and I have to finish grading those essays tonight. She hung up before Jamie could start teasing her again and slipped back into the cafe, where a half-drunk iced chai waited beside her laptop. Except her laptop wasn't alone anymore. Callan was sitting across from it. She froze mid-step. What how? He glanced up, sunglasses pushed into his dark hair, a calmness in his expression that made her heartbeat misbehave. You left your phone number on the check-in clipboard at the dock. I may have asked around. You tracked me down? I asked 2 people and offered a generous tip. You're not that hard to find. She sat slowly, unsure whether to be flattered or mildly terrified. You could have just let it end where it did. I didn't want it to. He leaned back, arms crossed. You disappeared last night without giving me your last name. You knew it, she said, folding her arms. I wanted to see if you'd give it to me freely. She stared at him across the small table. I don't get it. Why go through the trouble? He didn't answer right away. Instead, he looked around the cafe, then back at her. Because something about you made it hard to forget last night. And that's rare for me. She narrowed her eyes. You don't even know me. I remember things. He pointed at her laptop sticker. That's your school district's logo. You still use your maiden name on your badge. So, I'm guessing you were engaged, maybe married, and something shifted. She stiffened. You're guessing. I'm right. She pulled her laptop closer. Why are you really here? He exhaled. I want to take you somewhere. Not a yacht. Not a dinner. Just somewhere real. I have tutoring in 20 minutes. Cancel it. I don't cancel on students. He watched her carefully, then nodded. Good. I'd hate to be interested in someone who flakes. She blinked. You're interested? I didn't track down a woman I met 12 hours ago to talk about the weather, Brielle. She opened her mouth, then closed it. I don't know what you're expecting. I'm not expecting anything. I'm asking for a chance to spend time with you. No pitch. No pressure. She stared at him. You're not used to hearing no, are you? I don't hear it often, he said honestly. She tilted her head. What happens when you do? I figure out if it's worth changing someone's mind. She laughed despite herself. You're unbelievable. I've been called worse. She chewed her lip. I have a half-hour window between tutoring and a parent meeting. That's it. I'll take it.
Fine.
But if this turns into some weird flex with helicopters, I'm walking. No helicopters, he said, standing. Just a walk. They left the cafe and crossed 2 streets in companionable silence. He didn't talk much, which surprised her. He didn't fill the space with stories or charm. He simply walked beside her, hands in his pockets, occasionally glancing sideways like he was still figuring her out. They stopped at a narrow alleyway between 2 buildings that opened onto a tiny urban garden. It wasn't marked. No signs. No tourists. How did you find this? She asked. I needed quiet once. This was the only place that didn't ask anything of me. She followed him past a low iron gate. The garden was wild and beautiful, with ivy curling along the brick walls and a single fountain bubbling in the center. No one else was there. He sat on the edge of the fountain, hands clasped. She joined him, careful not to let her skirt dip into the water. I didn't expect this, she said softly. I didn't expect you.
She didn't know what to do with that.
So, he said, glancing at her. Why did your engagement end? She turned to him sharply. That's personal. I know. You don't just ask people that. You're not people. She shook her head. You're something else. He waited. She sighed. I was supposed to marry someone last year. He was safe. Predictable. My family liked him. But I woke up one morning and realized I couldn't breathe when I thought about our future. So I left. Moved here. Started over. He nodded slowly. That takes more courage than people realize. She looked at him. What about you? Why are you alone on yachts eating dinner by yourself? He stared at the water. Because I built a life too fast. Chased success so hard I stopped trusting anyone who smiled at me. Every relationship felt like a transaction. She raised a brow. And what did you want them to feel like? He glanced at her. Like this. She swallowed. A nearby bird startled, wings flapping loud enough to break the moment. She stood abruptly. I have to go. He stood with her. Can I see you again? I don't know. He reached into his jacket, pulled out a small white envelope, and handed it to her. What is this? She asked. Something I wanted to give you. You can open it or throw it away. Your call. She tucked it into her bag. You're very confident. I'm just not afraid of risk anymore. She hesitated. What made you afraid before? He held her gaze. I gave someone everything once. She sold it. She stared, feeling the weight behind his words. I'm not her, she said quietly. I know, he said. That's why I'm here. They parted at the street corner. She didn't look back, but she could feel him watching. Later that night, after grading 20 essays and scrubbing pasta sauce off her favorite blouse, she sat on her couch and opened the envelope. Inside was a single photo. It was of her, from the night on the yacht. She hadn't noticed anyone take it. She was laughing, head tilted back, unaware. On the back, in careful handwriting, were 5 words. The moment everything changed.
See.
She sat very still. No man had ever looked at her like she was a beginning. They usually made her feel like a phase, a placeholder, a next best thing. But Callan Zayne had looked at her like she was the thing he didn't know he needed until she showed up by accident. And somehow, that terrified her more than anything. Brielle stood just outside the staff entrance of the middle school, her arms wrapped tightly around a stack of test folders. Her breath came in short huffs, not from exertion, but from the storm inside her chest. She hadn't slept. Not really. That picture Callan left her with her own face mid-laugh, frozen in time, had worked its way into her bloodstream, into her thoughts, into the quiet moments when she should have been planning lessons or reviewing seating charts. He saw something in her. And worse, he made her feel it too. "Miss Palmer," a voice called from the parking lot. Brielle turned to see Principal Moreno hurrying toward her, clipboard in hand. "I need a huge favor. One of the counselors had to leave for a family emergency. Can you take the parent intake meeting for the new student transferring today?" Brielle nodded before she could think of a reason not to.
Sure.
"What time?"
Now.
"Conference room B." She headed down the hallway, trying to shake off the fog. She didn't have space in her brain for Callan Zayne today. This was real life. Attendance sheets, lesson plans, missing assignments. Not moonlit fountains and accidental yacht dinners. She stepped into the conference room and froze. Callan was sitting in the chair across the table, a young girl beside him. The girl looked to be about 11, with his same gray eyes and a guarded expression that didn't match her age. Her dark braid was too tight, her posture too perfect for a child. Callan stood. "Brielle." She gripped the back of the chair. "You're the parent?"
"Guardian," he said. "This is Isla."
"My niece." Brielle sat down slowly, unsure if her heart was racing from shock or the fact that he was here, on her turf, in the middle of her controlled world.
Isla didn't speak.
She stared at the table, hands folded neatly in her lap. Callan cleared his throat. "Her mother, my sister, passed away 6 weeks ago. I was awarded custody temporarily. We're finalizing everything through the courts." Brielle looked at Isla. "I'm so sorry." Isla didn't respond. "She hasn't spoken much since the funeral," Callan said quietly. "She's been through more than most adults." Brielle softened her tone. "Isla, I know this must be a lot. New city, new school, new people. But you're not alone here, okay?" Isla's eyes flicked to her, then back down. Callan ran a hand through his hair. "She's brilliant. But she shuts down when she feels cornered." Brielle nodded. "We can work with that. I'd like her to meet with our school therapist when she's ready. No pressure. Just conversation." Isla's shoulders stiffened at the word therapist. "I'll handle it," Callan said. Gently. Brielle looked at him. "Why didn't you tell me about her?" He met her eyes. "Would you have stayed in that garden if I had?" She didn't answer. He leaned forward, folding his hands. "She's the only family I have left. And I have no idea how to do this. I run a company, not a childhood." Brielle glanced at the girl again. "You don't have to know everything. You just have to show up.
Ida.
Every day. But it feels like I'm failing her." Brielle stood and walked around the table, kneeling beside Isla's chair.
"Hey.
"I know what it's like to feel like the ground disappeared. But here's the thing. Sometimes, the people who step in after the fall, they're the ones who stick." Isla blinked, and something in her expression shifted. The smallest tilt of her head. The beginning of trust. Brielle stood. "Let's get you settled. I'll walk you to your classroom." Callan followed them down the hallway. He didn't speak, but she could feel him watching Isla, like he was trying to memorize how she moved, what made her flinch, how to reach her. At the classroom door, Isla hesitated. "Do you want me to walk in with you?" Brielle asked. Isla shook her head once, then opened the door and disappeared inside. Brielle exhaled slowly. Callan stood beside her, fingers pressed to his lips. She likes you, he said. She doesn't know me. She didn't pull away. Brielle turned to him. What are you doing here, really? He looked down the hallway. I bought a property near the marina. I've been meaning to move closer to the office. When my sister died, Isla had no one else. I couldn't put her in the system. So you became a parent overnight. Not even overnight. It took weeks of court hearings and interviews. She doesn't trust me yet. I'm a stranger who showed up with a car and a lawyer. She will. He looked at her. Why do you believe that? Because you're trying. That's more than most. There was a beat of silence between them. Then he said, voice lower, I didn't come here to surprise you. This wasn't another orchestrated moment. I know, she said. But I'm glad I did. She looked away. Callan, this is complicated. You have a child depending on you. I have a job that bleeds into every hour of my life. We're not exactly set up for anything. I don't care what we're set up for, he said. I care about what's real. She shook her head, stepping back. I can't afford to get pulled into something that has no grounding. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, folded piece of paper, handing it to her. What is this? The name of Isla's favorite bakery. She hasn't wanted to eat anything since the funeral except for those raspberry croissants. Brielle unfolded it. Why are you giving this to me? Because I don't know how to make her feel safe. But you did. And if you don't want to see me again, fine. But maybe you could stop by sometime. Just for her. She stared at the note. You're serious, she said. I am. She folded the paper and slipped it into her bag. I'll think about it. He nodded and walked away. That night, Brielle stood in front of a small, ivy-covered bakery tucked between a bookstore and a florist. The sun was setting, casting gold across the windows. She stepped inside, ordered 2 raspberry croissants, and asked for them to be boxed separately. The woman behind the counter smiled. These are our bestsellers. Ever since that man started buying them by the dozen for his niece. Brielle hesitated. Does he come often? Every week. Same order. Always asks if we can warm one just in case she decides to eat it right away. Brielle paid and left. She didn't go to Callan's house.
Not yet.
But she carried the bag with her for blocks, unsure why her chest felt tight and her throat felt full. That night, she placed one of the croissants on a plate and set it beside her tea. She didn't touch it, just stared. He was trying. Every day. And she couldn't stop thinking about the way Isla had looked at her, not like she was a stranger, but like she might just be the first safe thing in a long time. She picked up her phone.
Not to call him,
but to find the school counselor's schedule. She had a student she wanted to make room for. The morning fog clung to the sidewalks like a secret. Brielle stood beneath the awning of Isla's new school, her fingers wrapped around a paper bag as she waited. She hadn't planned to come. She told herself sternly, rationally, that her role had ended when Isla walked into that classroom. But that had been before the bakery. Before the note. Before the ache in her chest had started growing roots. The front doors swung open. A line of students spilled out, laughter and backpacks and sneakers squeaking against the tile. Brielle spotted Isla near the end of the group, walking alone, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. She wasn't talking, but she wasn't hiding either. When their eyes met, something passed between them. Recognition just barely. Brielle stepped forward and held out the bag. These are for you. Isla glanced down at it, then up at her again, searching for the trick. They're from that bakery. The one you like. Isla didn't take the bag. She didn't move. You don't have to eat them now, Brielle said. You don't have to eat them at all. I just wanted you to know I remembered. Isla's fingers reached out slowly, curled around the paper handle, then pulled the bag close like it was something soft. She didn't speak. But she didn't walk away either. Brielle crouched slightly, keeping her voice low. I'll be around. Not just today. I'm helping your school counselor set up some new programs. So, if you ever feel like sitting somewhere that isn't your classroom, I'll be there. Isla turned toward the parking lot. Callan's car was idling at the curb, windows rolled down. He was watching but not interfering. Brielle stood. He's trying, really hard. Isla didn't look back, but she walked slowly toward the car, and when she slid into the passenger seat, she didn't close the door right away. That was enough for now. Later that evening, Brielle walked into her modest apartment, dropped her bag by the door, and froze. Callan was standing in the middle of her kitchen, holding a canvas grocery bag and looking entirely out of place beneath the dim pendant light. Her heart jumped. How did you? I asked your principal where to send a thank you gift. She gave me your address. She crossed her arms. That's wildly inappropriate. She said you'd say that. Brielle blinked. You bribed my boss. I made a donation to the school's arts program. She mentioned they'd been trying to fund a new kiln. That's not how this works. Callan opened the bag and pulled out a container. I brought soup. You look like you haven't eaten today. She stared. You broke into my apartment with soup? He lifted the lid and set it on the counter. I knocked. Your neighbor let me in. Said you always forget your keys. She pressed her fingers to her temple. This is insane. Is it? He moved closer. You show up for my niece when no one else has been able to reach her. You remember details no one else notices. And the only thing I can think about lately is how you look when you're talking to her like she's the most important person in the room. You can't just insert yourself into my life. I thought that's what you did to mine when you walked onto that yacht. She looked away. That was an accident. Maybe. But this isn't. She pushed past him and sat at the kitchen table. You're throwing all this at me like I'm supposed to just surrender. I'm not asking you to surrender. I'm asking you to see what's happening between us. Because I do. She leaned forward, elbows on the table. You think because we had one night and a few complicated conversations that we should build something out of that? I think something's already building. She shook her head. You haven't lived in my world. You don't know what it's like to work 3 jobs to get through college, or to move to a new city where no one knows you, or to stand in a classroom full of kids who need more than you have to give. I don't, he said. But I want to. She looked at him, really looked this time, and saw something raw beneath the layers of confidence. Not rehearsed. Not calculated. Just a man who had always had the world at his feet, and for the first time, didn't know what to do with something that couldn't be bought. Why me? She asked, voice barely audible. He stepped closer. Because you didn't ask me for anything. Not once. And still, you gave. I don't know how to be what you're used to. I don't want what I'm used to. That version of my life, it's done.
She stood.
You can't just decide that because I showed up. I decided that the minute I realized I wanted more than what I'd built. The silence between them stretched. Then she asked, what happens when it gets hard? He didn't flinch. Then we don't walk away. She looked down, then back up. You haven't earned that kind of promise yet. Then let me. The vulnerability in his voice startled her. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small, folded sheet of paper. This is a list of things Isla won't say out loud. She left it on the kitchen counter this morning. I think it was for me, but I know I won't know what to do with it. Brielle unfolded the paper. The handwriting was tiny, almost anxious. Each line began with, I wish. I wish I knew where my mom went. I wish I didn't feel like I'm ruining everything. I wish I knew if I'm allowed to laugh again. I wish someone would sit with me and not ask me questions. I wish I could sleep without feeling like I forgot something I was supposed to remember. Brielle swallowed hard. Callan's voice was soft. She needs someone who understands emotions I've never had to name. She nodded slowly. Then you'll have to learn. Will you help me?
She paused.
then nodded once. But not because of you. He smiled without triumph. Understood. She gestured to the soup. Is it actually edible? He opened the container and poured it into a pot. It's from my favorite Thai place. I'm not suicidal. As the soup simmered and the windows fogged up with steam, Callan moved through her tiny kitchen like he belonged. He didn't comment on the chipped cabinets or the hand-me-down dishes or the mismatched silverware. He just stayed. And as they sat down to eat, Brielle realized something quiet but undeniable. This guarded, powerful man wasn't trying to impress her. He was trying to stay close to the kind of life he'd never known how to build. And for the first time, she wondered what it would feel like to let him. The doorbell rang just as Brielle dropped a stack of essays onto her dining table. She stepped over a laundry basket and peeked through the peephole, her pulse flickering in her throat. She hadn't seen Callan in 4 days. Not since the soup. Not since Isla's note. She hadn't returned his calls. She needed space, and he'd given it. But now he was here. She opened the door. He stood on the other side, no suit, no polished presence, just jeans, a dark gray hoodie, and a face that looked like he hadn't slept much. A duffel bag hung from his shoulder. I need help, he said. She stepped back without thinking. He walked in and dropped the bag by her couch. Then he sat. Not on the couch, but on the floor, elbows on his knees, fingers laced together like he was holding something in. She closed the door and sat across from him, her back against the wall. You remember when I told you Isla's mother died? He said, staring at the floor. Brielle nodded. She overdosed, he said. She'd been clean for almost 2 years. I thought she was stable. She was working, doing art again. I sent her money every month, no questions asked. I thought I was helping. Brielle didn't speak. I found out this morning that the money I sent her wasn't just for groceries or supplies. She was buying from a guy she dated in college. Same guy who got her hooked the first time. He finally looked up, eyes bloodshot. I paid for the dose that killed her. Brielle's stomach sank. You didn't know. I should have, he said. I should have seen the signs. I should have shown up. I sent money instead of myself. She moved to the couch slowly and sat above him. You did what you thought would help. I made it worse.
No, she said. She made a choice.
A tragic one. But you didn't put that needle in her hand. He looked away. I keep thinking about Isla. What happens when she figures it out? When she realizes her uncle, the one who shows up with croissants and therapists, is the reason her mother didn't make it. You're not, Brielle said. You're the reason she has a future. He didn't respond. She reached for the duffel bag. What's this? He didn't move. I walked out of a board meeting today. My COO was presenting a merger I didn't approve. I stood up, told everyone in the room I was stepping down for a while, and left. She unzipped the bag. It was filled with documents, blueprints, handwritten notes, a stack of foundation proposals. What is all this? He looked at her like he was still deciding something. I want to build something lasting. Not another company. Something that matters. She leafed through the papers. One was a proposal for a youth center. Another outlined a trauma-informed school partnership. Another detailed scholarships for children in foster care. This is real, she said. I want it to be, he said. But I don't know how to build this kind of future without someone who understands what people actually need beyond numbers. Her breath caught. I'm not asking you to fix it, he said. I'm asking if you'll help me shape it. With Isla in mind. With kids like her in mind. She set the papers down. This isn't casual. I've never been casual about you. She stood and paced the room. You walked out on your company. You're showing up at my door with a bag full of dreams and asking me to help you make them real. That's not small. I know. And what if we fail? She asked. Then we fail trying to build something better than what we had before.
She stopped pacing.
And us? Where does that fit in the middle of all this?
He stood slowly.
That depends on whether you're still afraid I'm going to disappear when it gets hard.
She looked at him.
I'm not afraid you'll disappear. I'm afraid you'll stay and expect me to carry the weight of your redemption.
That's not what I want, he said.
I'm not looking for you to fix me. I'm looking for someone to stand beside me while I do the work.
She didn't answer.
Instead, she grabbed her coat, pulled on her shoes, and opened the door. Where are we going? He asked. To see if this future you want has a place in the real world.
They drove in silence.
She gave him directions to a neighborhood on the north side of the city, one filled with boarded windows, forgotten playgrounds, and cracked sidewalks. She parked outside a faded building with a rusted chain-link fence. The sign above the door read, Haven Learning Center. Inside, the walls were lined with student artwork. A boy with a speech delay read aloud to a therapy dog. A girl braided her teacher's hair. A volunteer painted a mural of a sunrise on the far wall. This place runs on donations, volunteers, and duct tape, Brielle said. It's where I volunteer on weekends. Callan walked slowly through the room, eyes scanning every detail. A woman approached with a clipboard.
Brielle,
you're early this week. I brought someone I want you to meet, she said. He's interested in starting something like this. On a bigger scale. The woman glanced at Callan. You the money or the mission?
He didn't blink.
Both.
She nodded.
Then come help us stack chairs. You'll get the picture faster that way. For the next hour, Callan worked beside teenagers and toddlers. He carried boxes. He high-fived a boy who solved a math problem. He knelt beside a girl drawing constellations and asked her why she chose the stars she did. When they left, his hands were smudged with paint and his shirt was wrinkled. In the car, he said nothing. Brielle finally spoke. Still want to build it? He turned to her. More than ever. She nodded. Then we start with Isla. We build something for her. And for all the others like her. They drove back to her place. When they stepped inside, her phone buzzed. It was a call from the school. Isla had been in a conflict during science class. She'd thrown a book, walked out, and refused to return. Brielle grabbed her keys. Let's go. They found Isla sitting on the front steps of the school, arms locked around her knees. She didn't look up when they approached. Callan sat beside her. They told us what happened.
She didn't respond.
Brielle knelt in front of her. Want to tell us why? Isla's voice was tight. They said my mom died because she was weak. That she chose drugs because she didn't care about me. Callan's jaw tensed. Brielle touched Isla's shoulder. Do you believe that? Brielle asked. Isla shook her head. I don't know what to believe. Brielle took a deep breath. Your mom made mistakes. Big ones. But you're not those mistakes. And neither is your story. Isla looked up. I threw the book because I didn't know what else to do. Callan's voice was rough. Next time, you throw it at me. Not anyone else. Deal? Isla almost smiled. Almost. She leaned against his arm, just barely. That night, Brielle stayed at their house. Not because Callan asked. Because Isla did. She fell asleep on the couch, papers strewn across her lap. When she woke, Callan was sitting on the floor again, back against the wall, watching the sunrise through the window. She rubbed her eyes. What time is it? Early. You haven't slept? He shook his head. I didn't want to waste the quiet. She sat up. What are you thinking about? He hesitated. Legacy. She watched him. What about it? I've built things that made money. But this is the first thing that feels like it might outlive me. She reached for his hand. Then let's make sure it does. Outside, the sun cleared the horizon, and for the first time in a long time, neither of them felt alone in what they were building. The rain came down in slow, persistent sheets as Brielle stood under the awning of the courthouse, her arms crossed tight over her chest. The city was quieter on Sundays, but there was still a heaviness in the air, like the buildings themselves were holding their breath. Callan stepped out of the black SUV and joined her. He didn't rush. He didn't speak either. Just came to stand beside her, the rain making a soft rhythm on the fabric above. Inside, the final hearing for Isla's custody was about to begin. She had another nightmare last night, he said without looking at her. She didn't scream, just sat up and stared at the wall for 2 hours. Brielle nodded. Did she talk? She asked if I still wanted her. Brielle's chest tightened. What did you say? I told her I'd want her even if she burned the house down, he said, and meant every word. They walked into the building together, their steps echoing off the polished floor. The courtroom wasn't large, just a judge, a clerk, a few chairs, and the lawyer Callan had brought in from Manhattan, who looked completely out of place in a room that smelled faintly of old books and wood polish. Isla was already seated at a small table, her hands folded, back straight. She wore a navy sweater and black jeans, her hair pulled into a low twist Brielle had done before they left the house that morning. She didn't look scared. She looked steady, older than she should have. The judge entered, and everyone rose. It didn't take long for the proceedings to begin. The attorney laid out Callan's case, his financial stability, the home he'd secured, the school Isla was thriving in. A social worker confirmed Isla's progress and cooperative attitude. A therapist provided a written evaluation, describing her attachment to her uncle as trust-building and emotionally dependent in a healthy, developing way. Then the judge asked if anyone wanted to speak on Isla's behalf. Callan stood. I do. He walked slowly to the front. No notes. No prepared remarks. I didn't plan for this, he said. I planned for business meetings and IPOs. I planned for algorithms and mergers, but I didn't plan for Isla. He looked at her, then not the judge, not the court. And then she showed up. And for the first time in my adult life, I didn't care if I was prepared. I cared that she had somewhere to lay her head and someone to tell her she was safe. He paused, his jaw tight. She doesn't need a perfect guardian. She needs one who will stay. I will. There was a beat of silence before the judge nodded. Motion granted. Full legal custody awarded to Mr. Callan Zayne. Brielle didn't realize she'd been holding her breath until Isla turned toward her, eyes wide, and mouthed one word. Home. Outside, the rain had stopped. The courthouse steps glistened, and the sun was beginning to push through the clouds. Callan stopped as they reached the bottom step. She asked if you'd come with us tonight. She wants to celebrate. Brielle hesitated. I have lesson plans to finish.
She drew a picture this morning, he said.
It was a house. And you were in it. Brielle stared at him. I know we haven't defined anything, he said. I know it's been a collision of timing and grief and grace. But I want to define it with you. I'm scared, she said. So am I, he admitted. But I'd rather be afraid building something real than be confident in something empty. That night, Brielle sat in the back seat of Callan's car with Isla asleep beside her, head against her shoulder. They'd gone to a diner on the edge of the city, where Isla had devoured a stack of pancakes and drawn stars on her napkin. They played cards. Callan lost every round. On purpose. Brielle looked at him now, his eyes in the rearview mirror. You're doing it, she said. That's the terrifying part. You're not alone.
He didn't speak.
Just reached across the console and took her hand. The next morning, Brielle stood in front of her classroom, holding a small envelope addressed in careful handwriting. Inside was a note from Isla. Thank you for not quitting on me. She folded it and placed it in the top drawer of her desk. 2 weeks passed. Then 3. And then everything changed. It began with a phone call. A journalist from a national publication had gotten wind of Callan's youth center proposal. They wanted an exclusive story about the billionaire who stepped away from tech to build a legacy through healing, about the woman he was building it with. They want to call it love after loss, he told her over breakfast. She raised an eyebrow. That sounds like a soap opera. They want to interview you. I'm a teacher, Callan. I'm not built for headlines. They want the truth. She hesitated. Then they're going to need more than a photo op.
So they gave it to them.
They brought the journalist into the Haven Center. Showed them the kids painting murals, learning coding, writing poetry about things they'd never said out loud before. They brought them to Isla's school, where she was now leading a peer group for students with grief experiences. They brought them home to a house now filled with art supplies and books, and a whiteboard on the fridge where Isla wrote one thing she was grateful for each day. The article went viral. Not because of the money, because of the story. The man who built a billion-dollar empire and walked away to build something better. The teacher who taught him how. And the girl who gave them both a reason to stay. Months passed. The day of the youth center's grand opening arrived with clear skies and a crowd that wrapped around the block. Kids ran through the halls, volunteers passed out lemonade, and a brass band played outside the gates. Brielle stood beside Callan at the ribbon cutting, her heart pounding as Isla handed them the oversized scissors. Callan leaned toward her. I bought the land next door. She turned. Why? For the school we're building next. She blinked. You're serious? I was hoping you'd want to help design the curriculum. She didn't answer right away. Then she reached for the scissors and said, only if I get to name the library. After who? She smiled. You'll see. That night, after the celebration, they sat on the rooftop of the center, lights twinkling above and the city glowing below. Isla had gone home early with a friend, exhausted but happy. For once, she'd laughed until her chest hurt. Brielle turned toward Callan. You still scared? He nodded. But I'm not running. She leaned against him. Neither am I. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box.
No velvet. No diamonds.
Just a simple band with Isla's initials etched on the inside. It's not a proposal, he said. Not yet. It's a promise. Her eyes filled. A promise that I'm not building this for you. I'm building it with you. She took the ring and slipped it onto her finger. Then we're already home. They didn't kiss. Not yet. It wasn't about the fireworks. It was about the steady flame. The quiet resilience of two people who found each other in the middle of a mistake and turned it into a miracle. And in the distance, as the city settled and the stars blinked into view, a girl slept soundly for the first time in years, safe, seen, and finally certain she belonged. And that was the beginning of everything. Callan stood in the nursery, quietly adjusting the mobile above the crib. Tiny brass birds spun slowly, catching the morning light that filtered through the linen curtains. Each one moved with a lazy grace, casting soft shadows across the floorboards. The room smelled like cedarwood and new fabric, the kind of scent that carried peace. Behind him, Brielle leaned against the doorway, arms folded over her light sweater. Her stomach had rounded beneath it, a subtle, sacred curve that made his chest ache more than he could explain.
She didn't speak.
Not right away. She just watched him in that quiet way she had, the kind that made him feel completely known and completely safe. You keep adjusting that thing like the birds are gonna fly off, she finally said, voice still laced with sleep. They're crooked, he replied, eyes still on the mobile. They're not. They will be once we put her down, and she starts kicking the mattress. Brielle stepped into the room. She won't care. He turned toward her slowly. But I do. She reached up, touched his face lightly with her fingertips. You're already the kind of father I didn't know existed. He covered her hand with his, holding it there for a moment. I didn't know I could be. They stood like that, still, in the hush of the nursery. The walls were painted a soft sage. A bookshelf in the corner already held a copy of every story Isla had once loved, plus a few new ones Brielle had chosen. A single rocking chair sat near the window, the same one Callan had refinished himself, sanding down the edges, painting it by hand. She kicked again this morning, Brielle whispered. Twice. He looked down at her belly, then slowly knelt and pressed his lips just above her navel. I felt her last night, right before you fell asleep on the couch. You should have woken me. I liked watching you breathe. She brushed her hand through his hair. You never stop watching. I don't want to miss anything, he murmured. Later that afternoon, they walked through the Foundation's main office. Brielle's growing bump didn't slow her stride as she moved from room to room, clipboard in hand, while Callan trailed behind, reviewing blueprints for the new art swing they'd broken ground on 2 weeks prior. Staff members greeted them with warmth, but no one hovered. The respect was there in the way people straightened when Brielle entered a room, in the way Callan paused and listened before offering an opinion. In one of the conference rooms, Isla sat at a long table with 2 other teens, sketching out ideas for a mural that would cover the side of the youth center's new building. I think we should use the river, Isla said, like how it cuts through the city, and put kids walking across it on bridges. One of the girls nodded. Yeah, like bridges made of books and music. Isla looked up as Callan and Brielle walked in.
Hey.
We're designing the outside wall.
We heard, Brielle said.
I like the bridges. That's beautiful. I got the idea from that night we drove through the city, and you said every kid deserves something strong to walk across, Isla replied. Callan glanced at Brielle, then back at Isla. You're becoming a leader.
Isla Strad.
I just want kids to know they can get across. Brielle smiled. Then you're already leading. That evening, they sat in the backyard around a fire pit, the air crisp and scented with wood smoke. Isla roasted marshmallows while Brielle leaned back into Callan's chest, her legs curled beneath her on the outdoor sofa. Did you ever think life would look like this? She asked. No, he said. Not even in the best version of my imagination. She tilted her head to look at him. What did you picture? A house without silence. A child who laughs in her sleep. You in the kitchen, humming off-key while you burn muffins. I only did that once. Twice, he corrected gently. She laughed, and he kissed the side of her head. I pictured a life where I don't have to earn love with wealth. And I got that. Isla looked over from the fire pit. You're being mushy again. Get used to it, Callan said. I'm gonna go inside before you start crying or something. You're welcome to stay and witness the proposal, he said casually. Isla turned. Wait, what? Brielle froze. Callan. He stood slowly, pulling a small, simple velvet box from his jacket. You once told me you couldn't carry the weight of someone else's need to be redeemed. And I never forgot that. Because what I needed wasn't redemption. It was grounding.
And you gave me that.
He knelt in front of her. You taught me how to stay. You taught me how to love without fear. And now I want to build every day after this one with you. He opened the box. Inside was a ring unlike anything she'd ever seen, rose gold, delicate, with 3 tiny stones set in a triangle.
Past.
Present. Future. She covered her mouth. Callan. I don't need a perfect wedding or a perfect life. I just need you. Will you marry me? She nodded, tears tracing down her cheeks.
Yes.
Yes, I will. Behind them, Isla hooped and dropped her marshmallow into the fire. The wedding was held in the courtyard of the youth center 3 months later. Spring had crept in, soft and green, and the flower beds along the building bloomed under Isla's careful planting. The ceremony was simple, just family, close friends, and the kids who had become part of their world. Isla stood between them as they exchanged vows, holding the rings in her palm like they were sacred. Callan's voice didn't shake as he spoke. I promise to honor your strength, to never ask you to carry what I should hold, and to build a life where love doesn't need proving, it just exists. Brielle reached for his hands. I promise to stand beside you in every storm and to celebrate everything that grows after the rain. I promise that no matter what we face, I won't run. They kissed as the sun broke through the clouds. Later that night, after the laughter had faded and the lights had dimmed, Brielle stood barefoot in their kitchen, one hand on her belly, the other holding a slice of leftover wedding cake. Callan came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist and resting his chin on her shoulder. "Did you know," he said softly, "that the first time I saw you, I thought I was hallucinating?" She laughed. "Because of the dress? Because of your eyes. You looked like someone who didn't belong in my world, and now I realize you were the one I was supposed to build it for." She turned in his arms. "We built it together." He bent and kissed her slowly, deeply, like he was sealing something eternal between them. That night, as they lay in bed, Brielle resting against him, her hand tucked under his shirt, Callan watched their daughter move beneath her skin. He felt at this quiet, complete knowing that everything he once feared had been replaced with something far stronger. Legacy. Not of wealth, but of love. Their story born from a mistake, shaped by grief, and sealed by choice was never about perfection. It was about presence. And that they had in abundance. Together. Forever. Fully home.